Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers TV, Santa Barbara's most popular and provocative local news program on the air since 2014. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, July 28th, 2023, and this week we have another in our Summer Pops series of episodes in which we bring on a prominent newsmaker from the community for a conversation about what they've been up to. And today I'm very pleased to welcome back Santa Barbara's 2nd District County Supervisor Laura Capps. Laura, thanks for being here. And joining me in the questioning, my ubiquitous, indefatigable, and constantly in demand colleague, Josh Molina, host of the global smash hit podcast, Santa Barbara Talks, and political reporter for Newshawk. Josh, thanks for being here. Before we get into the other stuff, Josh and I have spent the last week gasbagging about the bankruptcy of the Santa Barbara News Press. And I wanted to ask you, Laura, you're born and raised here and, someone for whom I think probably the news press was an important part of growing up. What do you remember the importance of the paper being, at least in the old days, and what is the community losing or lost with its decline?
Yeah, thank you to both of you and Starshine and Nick, just what you've done to put this all in perspective. And I rewatched the movie. I'd seen it long ago, but I just rewatched it with my family, I think everyone should watch it. I've sent it out to a bunch of people. I just think it's such an important part, sad, tragic part of our civic life now. And that's what I did grow up with. My childhood home in Santa Barbara is next door to the Stork House, where Thomas Stork lived. He died the year before we moved in, but his widow, Marion, lived there for another decade or so. And I just, my parents would talk about them just as both of them, but as being this, these pillars of integrity. And just that I just was thinking, reading up about him again, the vision that he had for Santa Barbara to make it so much bigger than what Santa Barbara could be. The fact that he had the vision for UCSB and to procure that land, the fact that the paper became a Pulitzer Prize winning paper. Sorry for the ambulance. There's our county services at work. But and then to just contrast that with what you both experienced and what we as readers experienced, this like the slow shriveling and the demise and the detraction of our community rather than the building up of our community, which is what he was known for. Making, and I love journalism. I'm not a journalist, but I've worked with so many journalists in my career by choice because I just have such deep respect for the craft, for what it means for politics, for governance, the fourth estate. And I feel it to be in public office and not have that daily written newspaper, that sort of song sheet that everyone is somewhat working off of. So it's ultimately a sad, tragic, I think Starshine put it well in the Independent story, something to the effect of an inartful, sad run-on sentence of an end.
Yeah, no, it's, I came here in 2002 and I had, looked at the paper, and because it was, I think, the most important and influential institution in town in the sense that everybody was plugged into it, but most people who were engaged plugged into it, and there was a shared set of facts. And that's really, I think, what we've lost. In addition to just the resources, we had 65 people in the newsroom at the time. And what do we got in town now, Josh? Maybe 10 reporters working full-time, maybe, to cover stuff. So probably less than that now that the news press is gone. So, that's a loss too. But anyway, Josh, you got the last word on this if you want.
Well, I think a lot has been said. I really appreciate Supervisor Capps's comments about what the paper means to her, because we know that a strong newspaper holds government and elected officials accountable. And of course, we all do that the best we can. But with the diminishing newspaper industry, it's hard to do that without appropriate resources. So I think it's great that you have an elected official who who wants coverage and wants accountability because they believe in good government. And so that's really, really cool, because you, as we know, Jerry, people tell you things privately, what they think, but to say it publicly, is really admirable.
Yeah, yeah. And not only a county supervisor, but a published writer on Newsmakers, JR. So we'll remember that too. You're in the clips. All right, let's talk about some issues. You'll be shocked to know that I want to start with cannabis. First of all, kudos to you for your success in finally getting an amendment past the board, and I guess unanimously that we're actually going to try to collect the taxes that people aren't passing. What a thought! So good on you for that. But I mean, a couple of other things. The big issue, or the biggest issue, or one of the biggest issues, has been is the odor, and particularly in cannabis. Why doesn't the county require carbon scrubbers as the best available control technology, which is what the ordinance says for the smell of pot? Do you agree that they should?
Yeah, I mean, right now, the way that I want to back up, because ultimately, we can get really into the weeds, pun intended, with cannabis. But for me, I would look at it as a good governance issue. It's an ordinance that's new. It's a new industry. I came in, long after it's been written. It's sort of settled, but and cannabis is legal, and that's here to stay. And I fully support that and support the industry here. But I'm less interested in kind of looking back at all the things that I think were problematic, and more, okay, now that I'm here and I'm lucky and I'm privileged to have this position to be an elected official, how can we fix it? And so focusing on taxes seemed like the most obvious, because again, if only half of your operators are paying taxes and your revenues are coming in over 100% less than what was projected, and the point of the program is to bring in revenue, then let's stop and think, okay, if last year the program brought in 5.8 million, but it cost the county 5 million to administer. There's something off here, right? And for me, I feel a deep sense of the fact that I'm working with taxpayer money here. And if part of your business was 100% off projections, any good CEO would say, hey, let's make some changes, let's tighten it up. So I was happy to work with Supervisor Hartman on tightening up the tax piece. And so really what you're dealing with this cannabis ordinance is the externalities of how it's impacting people. And odor has been an issue, certainly in some parts of the county, not as much in mine in the 2nd district, but I've been out to one of the cannabis operators that does use carbon scrubbers, which is a very well proven way to reduce the odor on neighbors, on schools, on Kate's school, on the high school there. And it seems like a smart way to go from my perspective. Right now, the way that the ordinance is written is that because the technology is changing, they didn't want to stick to one particular solution. But I think it's time to look at if that one seems to be working the best, why aren't we using it? Because again, that's just how I approach any issue. Let's find what's working best and try to implement it here. And that's what carbon scrubbers, I think, seems to make a lot of sense.
So will you advance a measure that requires carbon scrubbers for all of them?
I'm looking at that. I mean, I was really happy that tax measure that you just referenced got 5 votes. That's really important to me as a new supervisor. I'm working with 4 other colleagues. It's important to get consensus and look where there is consensus on the tax measure. The first folks that we met with about it was the industry, to sort of say, hey, what would this do? And so yeah, I'm looking into kind of next steps on what to focus on. Again, just looking at an ordinance that's been far from perfect. The revenues are way down. We have an agriculture report that just came out on Friday that the rest of agriculture in Santa Barbara County is $2 billion bringing in. I mean, the time and energy we spend on one, to me, seems out of proportion. Strawberries brings in $800 million to this county. I want to support the strawberry industry. I want to support the cauliflower industry. I mean, I think economic vitality is really important, and we're getting pretty. This has been at a minimum a big time commitment.
So I think that's a yes. You will work to require carbon scrubbers for all of the.
I'm looking at next things, and obviously I have to, but I know how to count. I can't get carbon
You only need
scrubbers.
3. You don't need 5.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay.
Why can't you get to 5? Like, what are people saying on the other side of why carbon scrubbers should not be sort of an automatic thing to do?
Because they're extremely expensive and the industry's hurting right now, which is true.
Well, one of the reasons that the industry is hurting, as you know, is because there's a huge glut of cannabis in California, to which Santa Barbara County is really contributing. Given that, why don't we lower the acreage caps? I mean, so somebody gives up a license, we got a waiting list. Why do we have a waiting list? Why don't we lower the caps? We want to lower the glut. We want to help the people who are succeeding. Why not? What am I missing here?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are actually leaving the industry, right? And that's what, the market is way down. If you hear any one consistent message from folks in the cannabis industry, it's that they're hurting and they're looking for more support, not stricter, not tougher. So, I'm open to a lot of options. I'm also working with my colleagues and seeing where there's common ground, seeing where I can actually get ideally 5 votes, seeing where I can get for sure 3. So we'll see what we do next.
All right. All right, Josh, go ahead on housing. I don't want to spend the whole time on
Okay.
that. I wouldn't.
Well, I was just going to mention one other thing.
Yeah.
There was 5 votes to look at a change in the tax system because right now it's based on
square footage, gross revenues.
Exactly. And so we don't know what that will be. It'll be on the ballot next year. But I think that's another significant, the fact that there's 5 votes for that wasn't there prior to me being on the board.
So where does that stand? It's going to be on the ballot for sure, the change?
Well, we have some time. So there was 5 votes asking staff to come back with different options for being on the ballot, either March or November of next year.
And
Probably
quickly,
November.
what would be the advantage for square footage over gross revenue?
More transparency. You have
self-reported gross revenue.
Exactly. Self-reporting on a cash business, gross receipts, a lot of challenges with that one.
All right. Josh, what do you got?
So maybe we can shift gears, like you suggested, to housing. Right now, obviously, we're dealing with the Santa Barbara County housing element, state pressures to zone to build housing. And in your district, Supervisor Capps, there's been a lot of talk about San Marcos growers.
Yep.
And the number of units there. There's I don't know if it's an application or a pre-application, but there is a development that they're talking about there where they partner on half of it, or not half, but a portion of it with County Housing Authority. And the other part is going to be market rate. Can you talk a little bit about the housing considerations that you go through? Because this is this balance, right? We need more housing. Like, it's not a declarative genius statement by anyone.
Right.
No matter how they want to put themselves on a pedestal to say we need more affordable housing. Obviously, the question is, how do we have more affordable housing without losing our ag space, without losing what we love about Santa Barbara County and Goleta, which is not your jurisdiction, but it's all very close to each other.
Sure.
What is going through your mind right now in the housing element in terms of how the county is approaching this process?
Yeah, and thanks for your reporting on this. I mean, this is one of those issues where, thankfully, my time on the school board kind of prepared me with COVID. I mean, there's you kind of make no one happy, right? When it comes to housing, there's so many competing pressures, and trying to find that balance is what I've been doing in the 7 months since I've been on the board. We have the pressure from the state, the mandate, can't do anything about that. Some people wanted us to try to sue that.
Well, you can. There's an initiative. You can sign on to the initiative. Go ahead.
Okay. And then we need more housing, and you hear about it. So it's the most thorniest issue by far that I'm dealing with, that we're dealing with as elected leaders. And that's again where reporting really helps to get the facts straight and make sure that that we're working with the same facts. But I think how I approach it is just trying to understand that we're in we have to have more housing. We don't want to convert agriculture. So immediately what I went to work with was, okay, how do we bring more sites into this mix so that we can preserve agriculture? Because I know, having been born in Goleta, raised in Santa Barbara, remembering the lemons, just, I mean, how important to Goleta, especially the Eastern Goleta Valley and Goleta, that agriculture block off of Patterson is so central to sort of the character of this community, not to mention the industry that I just mentioned, $2 billion industry. So how do we do that? And it's going to be hard. And we're going to, everyone who might be for affordable housing doesn't necessarily want it right in their backyard. And so we have to work with UCSB. And the big news here this week was that, Munger looks to be over, and that hopefully
Lorenzilla is dead.
I'm optimistic that that's going to break through, that they've seen the light, and we're going to get some actual numbers that we haven't seen in far too long out of UCSB that will help relieve some of the pressure. Josh, you did good reporting on how the lack of housing by UCSB has just cascaded throughout South County, potentially even North County too. And we saw that with the core spaces where big complexes in Isla Vista that were traditionally low-income families are now being squeezed out because students need that housing. So it's a big puzzle. And what I try to do when I approach something very daunting is just find examples that are working elsewhere. And the two things I'll mention was first, the most we had a success on was, why not county land? We have a lot of county land that is not used, or it's, there's dilapidated buildings that aren't at full capacity. So thankfully, Supervisor Hartman and I were able to get 7 county sites added, which would translate into hundreds of units for our goal. That was number one. Number two is the multi-use. So I, personally drive around, and there's these sort of areas of mixed use like Magnolia Center and Turnpike. Why can't we have housing there? And that's where I've been really confused by the state, is because I worked hard personally, like just cold calling the owners of these developments, and they were interested. But the state, on the one hand, has legislation by Buffy Wicks to encourage high density housing in multi-use areas. Yet the housing community development says, no, we don't want that because it will take too long. So I'm disappointed. I'm optimistic about the county sites, but I'm disappointed that we haven't been able to get much headway on turning in multi-use sites into housing. I know that was a long answer, but fundamentally, I think this is a long process, and I just try to find openings of opportunity where we can preserve agriculture, work with housing authority, get UCSB to come to the table more as a good faith partner. And I think we'll, do what we can to get to that state mandated number.
Yeah.
Jerry, let me just follow up on that, and then you can finish. But I mean, it is correct, and you're absolutely right. The original county housing element proposal did not include these county sites, and it was such an obvious oversight. And then you and I others, I guess, but you led the way to say, let's look, hey, if we're going to propose housing on these other sites, let's look at our own properties as well. And that was a significant move. I live in Goleta, and I can tell you that I have not met a single person who is not an activist. No disrespect to activists, but like a person who says, let's build more housing on the Glen Annie site. Okay. And that's not because they don't want housing, and it's not because they don't want housing in their backyard. Right. It's because Glen Annie Stork off-ramp is already incredibly impacted. And how do you put that many people there without creating new roads and really doing something that is almost like creating a whole new little mini city, right? And so I'm just wondering, and I know it's not your district, but do you have anything? Do you support 1,900, or I guess it's 1,500 apartments at the Glen Annie site? I know that it's early, but to what degree could you support something like that? I'm sure you get letters. I mean, I know you do. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that specific site?
Yeah, no, the most we received was about that site, because I think the number that came out was 1,500. It's too dense. I mean, what it's going to be, and that's far from me to, and nor should I be putting my thumb on the scale at this point, because we have a process, but that's too dense, and the traffic implications and what that means for Dos Pueblos right there, and all that. But I did meet with the owners of that site, and they don't even want 1,500. They're looking at sort of 800, et cetera. Again, so that's why it's like a puzzle piece. If we can bring in county sites, if we can bring in potentially multi-use, then it just relieves that pressure on sort of these either agricultural sites, or in the case of Glen Annie, the golf course, and have it be first at a starting point less than that, so that the impacts are less.
Yeah, your political identity is very connected to environmental issues. And here's my concern, backing up again. And I just don't hear the conversation about where are the resources coming from? Where's the water coming from? How is the water treatment going to be? What about, insurance companies are canceling everybody's fire insurance. I mean, we're going to make this all denser. It just seems like the driving issue, which it is because of the great Scott Wiener and your governor, is, build. But wait a minute, at the same time, we're in a drought. We're in a 1,000-year drought. Why is there not more conversation about balancing that?
Well, there has to be soon with the environmental impact report, but curiously to me, as a newcomer to the county, the state's housing element doesn't require those kind of ramifications. I don't understand that. That's the $1 million question of how you can have a plan, but if there's no water, or if the transportation impacts are too large. So we have a steep road ahead to try to figure this out. But back to the county sites, it's not just, it's also smart because county workers can't afford to live here. A third of the county doesn't live in the county, a third of the county employees. So again, back to this, we have this real need. And I firmly believe that people should be able to live where they work. And that's the Santa Barbara County that I grew up in when I was a kid, that you could work where you lived, but it's not the case anymore, that our workforce really has to live, 20, 30, 40 an hour away. And that's not good for anybody. That's not good for the families, and it's not good for us as a sort of community cohesion. So it's a tough one, but we do need more housing. So I am going to push. I'm not sort of saying not here, not in my district, not here, but we have to just do it right. And I hope we'll get there. I'm learning a lot by this process.
Yeah, I mentioned it quickly in sort of flip way, but this initiative that is out there gathering signatures, I think it's called Neighborhood Voices, which is being driven by some local elected officials in Northern California, which would undo a lot of the mandates in SB 50 and give local control, which has been seized by the state backed. Is that something you would support?
I should no. I'll look at it, of course, but I'm not in this, let's fantasize that we don't need to abide by this mandate. And I also, again, like I just said, we do need the housing. It's abundantly clear.
Well, it's not we can talk about it. It's not an anti-housing thing per se. It's just a pro-local control thing. Let us build it, with the sensitivity to our own communities, which I think is really being lost.
I think that's right.
Talk about what's going on with homelessness in your district, because there's been a lot of controversy about sites and things. Where does that stand?
Dignity moves. So, as I look back on this sort of first 6-7 months of my time on the board, really engaging issues have come up. The rent eviction out in Isla Vista was probably the most, and right there following it was the fact that before I got on the board, my colleagues wisely chose a site in District 2 where the third Dignity Moves project is going to be. And when I talk about Dignity Moves, the model is how to deal with this quagmire of a homelessness problem where we have too many homeless, we don't have enough shelter, we don't have enough housing and beds, but this group has come along and partnering with the county, partnering with the different cities, has done really well and shown results. And again, that is from like sort of a good governance perspective. If you can show results, I say let's magnify it, let's replicate it. So the next project is in Santa Maria, but the third project will be off of Hollister in District 2, and I'm excited about it. But the community was, there was a lot of concerns and questions, so we did some community meetings. We had a bunch of people show up. A lot of them weren't too happy, but we were able to answer a lot of the questions and address the concerns. Sheriff Brown joined me on the second meeting, along with Chief Hartwig, talking about just safety and public safety. So I'm actually excited about this. I think it'll help the community because fundamentally right now in that area off of Hollister near where Creekside is, there are about 60 people living in encampments, which is why the site was chosen. And that's not safe for anybody, especially those folks, but also to the schools in the surrounding neighborhood to have people unsheltered and living like that in a dangerous environment. So the goal is to get those 60 people into dignified, safe housing.
But in the meantime, let the encampment stay.
Well, you can't have to, yeah, because of the law, Boise law. We can't shut down an encampment if we don't have enough beds to offer. So the magic number that the county's trying to get to, I think it's about 563. And if we get that many more beds, and the Board of Supervisors has made a strong commitment to getting to that number so that we can shut down encampments and have the adequate resources to move people. So fundamentally, these are folks who are already here. That was the main message that we needed to convey to neighbors, because the fears go up of like, oh, you're going to import, homeless people from Venice, Santa Monica. But no, these folks are here already living amongst our community. And right now we can't really do much about it, them living in these encampments. But if we have these shelters, we can offer them the beds and work with them. And it's not just beds, it's round the care treatment, substance abuse treatment, mental health treatment, a caseworker per person. It's really intensive, and the results have been have been good. I know a lot of people have toured the Santa Barbara site on Santa Barbara Street, and things are going well there.
Yeah,
I think that.
Go ahead, Josh.
Well, I would just say I think that's a really good example of the county and government working to house the people who are most in need of housing. And my son goes to DP, and I sometimes walk over the Stork Glen Annie interchange, and there's encampments there, and so I really think that's a great program because it actually houses people who need the housing. And going back to the state issue, one of the things that I've been trying to report on, and it's nuanced, but I think I just want to say it every time I can, is we need more housing, but we have to recognize that this housing that is going to be built is going to be, for the most part, market rate. And so I don't think that we need more housing for people who already can afford housing and need new housing and better housing. We need housing for working class people who work and provide the services that we all depend on. And that includes, like journalists don't make a lot of money. Like journalists would need this kind of housing, but the journalists can't afford $5,000 for like a 2-bedroom or something like that. So I think one of the things to get at, and this goes back to your point, Jerry, with local control, is it's not enough to just say, let's build more housing with 20% inclusionary. Like somehow we need to figure out a way that if we're going to build housing, that it needs to be affordable to most people and not just the people with the highest paying jobs in the community, because that's not housing the people who are, when we walk outside on the street, who need it, and so I think that the Dignity Moves projects are great because it's exactly who needs the shelter. And these other market rate housing, I mean, what is it? Sonos is moving to Goleta now. Okay.
I know.
So Sonos and it's great that we have them in our community. Obviously, their products are incredible, but I mean, they can afford these new apartments that are going to get built because they're like they're going to not luxury, but they're going to be expensive.
Yeah,
And
I
so
mean, all you got to do is look at the AUD program in the city.
you just got to figure out a way to build the housing for the people who need it. That's the real nuanced challenge, I think.
Yeah, and that's where, workforce housing, looking at the sites that are already owned by the county. I know Santa Barbara Unified is doing that with Gabe Escobedo and Superintendent Maldonado, of looking at school sites, because then you take away the biggest part of the equation, which is the land is so expensive. So if you own the land, which is what the Dignity Moves project is based on, the county owns the land, so we're able to loan it to Dignity Moves to do these projects, and then it takes out the biggest challenge is the cost of land.
Hey, Supervisor, I'm old enough to remember when you ran for supervisor in the first district and put forth a very comprehensive ethics proposal for the county, which has virtually none, which included, among other things, limits on campaign contributions, a lot of transparency about contributors, an ethics code, things of that category. Where's that stand? Now that you're in office and you can push that right through.
Good news. Yeah, we've made some great strides. And I have to just give credit to our Assemblyman Steve Bennett, our former assembly person from down south, because he really ushered that in Ventura County. And I looked at what he did there. And I just fundamentally, I believe in transparency. I know I've been around politics for a long time, so I'm not naive that there's money in politics, but I'm trying to, at a minimum, make it be as transparent as possible, and fundamentally try to reduce conflicts of interest so that we're really serving the people and not special interests. And I'm pleased we've made some good strides. I mean,
Like what?
Well, help me explain it quickly. Form 700. So I'll try to explain it very quickly, but ultimately, we have staff for each supervisor in our county, and they have a lot of influence.
They have a lot, and they run independent expenditure committees in their spare time too.
Hey, you're stuck in the old days. I'm talking about now, but they have a lot of influence on supervisor, on policy, and up until just this last month, they were subject to no laws, regulations about sort of outside income that they were receiving or business interests. There's a Form 700 that elected officials all have to disclose. It's our financial disclosures. It's important. If you're on a commission, you have to disclose that. But for some reason in Santa Barbara County, the staffs of supervisors didn't have to abide by those rules. And that was a problem for me. I advocated it for the last few years and was able to push that through with Supervisor Hartman just in this last month here in our county. Again, it seems it's a very technical thing, but it's important because what we're trying to get at is eliminating.
Has that been approved, Laura?
Again, 5-0, and I have to give credit where credit is due. Supervisor Nelson said, let's not just do chiefs of staff. Let's have it apply to all staffs working for supervisors. So, and the full support from all 4 of my colleagues.
So this would even include chiefs of staff who are the directors of the county Democratic Committee, as well. They would.
Everybody.
All right. And what about
I'm just gonna jump in because I've put my list of donors on my website. I mean, again, I wish money wasn't in politics, but it is, and I just think it's really important for people to know. And the state has come down. It's a whole nother technical issue we could talk about, but bore people probably.
Where does that stand?
SB 1439, that means that's again trying to get at these conflict of interest. So the state passed a law effective January 1st that all local government has to abide by the rules that if you take a donation over $250 and you're voting or considering that permit request by that person, you have to recuse yourself. And that is I'm all for that. I'm all for that spirit of trying to eliminate these conflicts of interest and at a minimum show the public, okay, this is what's going on here. So there isn't, that we're doing our best to serve the public's needs. So that's law, that's state law, and we're grappling with it, how to implement it here.
All right. But that applies, as I recall, only to contracts. It wouldn't apply, say, for example, if the deputy sheriffs gave a bunch of money to to a supervisor. You wouldn't have to declare that.
It applies to land use mostly. You're right. That was a loophole that the state passed, but certainly something to look at in the future. But fundamentally, I guess, again, I just think I try to govern by thinking, okay, what's best for everyone, not just a special interest that I might really support, but it's really important to look at the big picture. And we all should know at least, and you guys do a good job of exposing, which campaign donations, et cetera, are being sent, because this stuff is important. These decisions get made and they impact people's lives, and they stay in place for a long time. And I feel the weight of that very seriously, that I have to do my job to really serve what's best in the public's interest, and not some sort of group that I might, be aligned with somehow.
All right, Josh, you got anything on this issue?
Well, I was just going to ask if this new ordinance was in effect during the cannabis discussion, would Doss Williams had to have recused himself from votes as somebody who accepted donations while they were crafting an ordinance, or is that a different situation?
I think I'll just answer that more generally rather than kind of litigate the past. But yeah, I mean, it has wide implications, especially on land use permits, of which cannabis has been something that this board has had to deal with. So yeah, but it could be anything, a development, it could be any sort of land use application. If that person has given more than 250, as it is now, this elected official either has to give that back or recuse themselves.
Last thing on this issue, I get emails whenever I cover politics, and during election times, I get emails from all kinds of people, and they say it's really not ethical for, and I'll be specific because I'm a journalist, for Doss Williams, chief of staff, Darcel, to be the head of the county Republican or Democratic Party. Sorry, not Republican, Democratic Party, because that's a really pivotal position. And then what that essentially means is that Doss becomes the power broker of who's going to run for whatever, because you kind of have to get his permission if the Democratic Party is going to endorse somebody. And this better than anyone, as a Democrat who runs against a Democrat. And so that may be a conspiracy theory by some, right? Like, a lot of people don't like Doss Williams, so they're going to paint him with like being every evil thing that he could do. But on the other hand, it does kind of make sense of like, wait a minute, should you have somebody who chairs the party, whose boss, be a supervisor? Because then you have to be in good with the supervisor, probably, if you want to get endorsed for some sort of election. I get this all the time, right? And it's always just sort of like background noise, like, I don't know how I can go down that road reporting, because it's a lot of weirdness, but there is some truth there, right? I mean, there is some essence there. What do you think, Laura, of that kind of scenario? Should there be a rule that prevents that?
I think that's a great question for Doss, honestly. I mean, I'm running my office the way I want to run it, with the kind of ethical standards that I adhere to. But honestly, that's a good question. If you had him on the show, to ask him that yourself. I have a very productive working relationship with him. I've been pleased by that. And so I'm not going to sort of get into how he staffs his office, but I appreciate that. I've heard that as well, that concern. I just have to say too, because I want people to be clear, these offices are nonpartisan, and that's really important to me. As much as I am a Democrat, our state constitution does say that all local offices in California need to be nonpartisan. And it's really important to keep that front and center as we do this work. These issues of housing and ambulance contracts and homelessness, the Democratic part of it rarely is at play. And I think, and that's something that I feel is important to me, as how I govern.
You agree with me, though, don't you, Supervisor, that this all argues for term limits of 2 terms for supervisors?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard you talk about that on recent shows. I mean, I'd look into that. I'm not, I think that we've had great supervisors here in Santa Barbara County, and I'm looking to be here for a long time. So I think term limits have their pluses and minuses. I saw it in Congress. I'm sorry, in the state legislature, but I'd be open to some sort of initiative. I haven't heard that much.
Well, that's a big no. Okay, hey.
It's a great job, I have to say. I want to be here for a long time, so that's part of my answer.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We're getting tight on time, so I'm gonna just ask you some lightning round things here.
Okay.
Our friend Andy Caldwell had some interesting information this week, and I think Gianna did a piece on Newshawk about it, that amid this controversy we've had about the ambulance contract, which previously was held as a monopoly by AMR and is now, you guys voted to open up the contract, and county fire got, and associated fire agencies got a piece of it. But it turns out they were buying ambulances 2 years ago. Well, you know, which suggests, you know, the fix was in, that they already knew this was going to happen. What was your reaction to that story?
I think it's a nothing burger. I mean, I should, let's step back, because I'm not sure everyone's, you know, I'm happy with the outcome of this ambulance contract. This was definitely a thorny issue. I came in not only the ninth inning, but you give me the right baseball analogy. I don't know, overtime is when I came in on this. Not in overtime.
You came in the middle of the movie. Say.
I'm just happy that our local fire department is, you know, now has a chance to go for this. And I think part of the ability that was required from the RFP, from the request for proposals, was to show that you have the ability to bring in vehicles and be able to serve capacity. And that's really what this whole issue is about, is that when someone's in distress and calling 911, how fast can people get there? Do we have this kind of confusing system, but we want our local people to be serving our local needs, and that's why I was happy to support it. In terms of this conspiracy that they knew and all this stuff, I think that they were, as far as I understand, they were doing what they needed to do to show that they were getting ready.
Yeah. Of course, Ron Worf, the head of Cottage Hospital, has expressed concern that with the way it is now, he's worried about sort of the the transfers from one facility to another, for whether it's from a nursing home to Cottage or somewhere else, because there's not a lot of money to be made on those. It's the emergency calls. Have you talked to Ron about that? And do you think that's a legitimate concern that he has?
Yeah, the hospital leaders wrote us a letter, they expressing some of those concerns. What I liked about what the piece of the firefighter, what they put forward, which really appealed to me from this fiscal responsibility perspective, was they were saying that they aren't, you know, part of their rationale is that they aren't a for-profit global conglomerate like AMR is. And so all services and the payments that you get from people using ambulances would go back into the system, back into the services. And that really appealed to me. They totaled that, I think, about $8 million a year. And so that really appealed to me. But I can, I have faith. I have faith in our fire department that service is going to be good. I have to, you know, since I've started, we've had all these atmospheric rivers, and I'm so impressed with our fire department. I'm so impressed with our first responders in general. Our county can be really proud of how hard and how cohesive, and these departments really work so well together. I've been really impressed. I mean, 90% of the calls that the fire department take have nothing to do with fires. And, you know, they're helping people.
And by the way, just to tangentially real quick, you know, those who read Nick's column this week on the News Press may have noticed that the lead had a subliminal message about the whole ambulance issue, where the fire department shows up and then the AMR comes in 23 seconds later.
I saw that.
His Marxist-Leninist slip was showing on that. He wants it all coordinated under the fire department. All right, and then we had this really harsh grand jury report on the jails, and the number of people who died or had other problems, who were mentally ill in the jails. What's your reaction to that?
I'm grateful to the grand jury. It's a group of citizens who come together and diligently and quietly do this really tough work as volunteers, many of whom were, you know, in professional capacities that are somewhat relevant. And it was alarming to read this. I mean, it didn't surprise me necessarily because of the issues we have with our mental health inadequacies. Again, good intentions, really strong partners in this criminal justice world of probation and our district attorney and our jails. But we have real challenges when it comes to capacity of serving the severely mentally ill. And thankfully, we're tackling it. Tanya Heitman, who was chief probation officer, is now leading this effort of bringing everyone together so that we keep people who are severely mentally ill out of jail. One of the most heartbreaking public testimonies that I've listened to in my time as a public official was listening from these parents of severely mentally ill people who have been, arrested 16 times with schizophrenia, and just the duplication of that. There's a new program called Familiar Faces, so that all our different partners, not just the county, but all the cities, they have a playbook essentially of who these folks are, because there's really about 100 of them, thankfully, in our county, who are familiar and just in and out of this cycle of mental illness and ending up being treated in jail, which only exacerbates the mental illness. It only makes it worse. So thank you to the grand jury. We have a lot to do, and I look forward to being part of the first response that I'll be a part of responding to the grand jury when it comes before the board.
Is Sheriff Bill Brown an impediment to that?
No, I mean, he doesn't want mentally ill people in his jail. He doesn't. And who's at fault? That's not my business, but he wants to be part of the solution. I've toured that jail. It's hard to see. And we all want this to be as efficient as possible.
All right.
Humane as possible.
Josh, I know you had a question about Laura's previous life as a member of the Santa Barbara Unified School District. So why don't we?
Oh yeah, I'd love some schools questions. Let's talk schools.
You're probably going to answer this of, I don't want to litigate the past. I want to talk about the future. But Principal Elise Simmons recently announced that she was leaving Santa Barbara High, and she's sort of the latest of the longtime employees who have left Santa Barbara Unified. And I know to some degree, and you and I have talked about this over the years, that it sounds like it's sort of just a broken record, but I still hear frequently from people who are unhappy with the leadership of Santa Barbara Unified. And of course, Elise Simmons is going to tell you she had a new opportunity and she wanted to take it. And it's not because of Santa Barbara Unified. And as professional people, we all have to do that because we don't want to burn bridges on our way out. I mean, I guess unless we're journalists,
and
take
you know
ethical
what?
stands.
I really learned that too. I'm someone who's lived by that. Go ahead.
So my point is that I'm sure Hilda's like, an incredibly
Hilda
Maldonado is an incredibly qualified, talented person, right? I understand that that's a part of her, but I still have a lot of people who are saying I can't work there anymore because of her. And you were there, you and Kate Ford, you hired her, you saw that. Is there any concession at all you can make that maybe that there's an issue there when you're losing Elise Simmons as principal of Santa Barbara High in the middle of the summer? Is there anything at all you can say in retrospect about what's happening at Santa Barbara Unified?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's been rocky. COVID was rocky. Dr. Maldonado would be the first to say she had a lot to learn. We had to learn as a board, how to work with her. She came in tough climate. A lot of people are unhappy, but I think we're in a much better place. I know you want to draw a direct line between Dr. Simmons' decision and what might be happening. I don't know why she left. It's a great school. It's my alma mater. That's a really important hire. I'm glad that Fred Razzo is stepping in. People said good things about him, and I'm happy about that. So I think that even Hilda herself will say that things got off to a rocky start. And if those ramifications are still playing out, I wouldn't know that. I just hope that that school gets a new great principal. It deserves one. It's a great job. And at least Dr. Simmons did a great job during COVID. Again, I just wouldn't underestimate how hard it's been. And that's something I can attest to be in schools during COVID was no walk around the park. And a lot of people are looking at different options. And I just am cheering on those who are still in the trenches because it's tough.
Well, you know, anyone can file a lawsuit, but I don't know if you've read Todd Rickman's lawsuit, but it's pretty amazing reading if you read what he suggests how he was treated. And it's just a lawsuit, it's just allegations, nothing has been proved. But again, I mean, there's an example, you know, of how it surfaces to the public through litigation. And I'm not trying to draw a link between Hilda and that. I just, like, people tell me things as a reporter. That's
Sure.
all. I just wanted to know in retrospect if you had any sort of views, but you answered it. So
Well,
Yeah, I think we're also just at a different point. I mean, I applaud, like I mentioned earlier, that Dr. Maldonado and Gabe Escobedo in particular and other board members are looking at housing options. I mean, I think, again, when we were there and I was part of this, we were dealing with mask mandates and vaccine mandates and mental health challenges, of course, that are still there. I'm looking, I know she has a good team around her now, and there's a lot of great leadership. I'm a parent like you are, and I'm really pleased with Santa Barbara Unified as a parent, as an alum, and again, just cheering them on. And I like being able to support them from the county perspective now. There's lots of ways in which we've worked on things together. Fentanyl crisis. It's been interesting and valuable to me to be in this on this side of things and being able to support the schools that I'd like to support.
but with the benefit of hindsight, and this is the last question, would you have required as a condition of her employment that Dr. Maldonado undergo intensive leadership management training?
As a condition of her, I feel like you guys are picking at stuff. I mean,
Us?
everybody wants to be a better leader. I want to be a better leader. I would like management training. Is that what yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think she's.
No, I mean, she didn't have the experience at this level. She just didn't.
well, I mean, I think what Jerry's referencing, not to defend Jerry here in a little bit condescending response to him, is to him, not by you. But I mean, the board did vote for her to like meet with a public relations professional for her to go to training and do these things. And I think Jerry's question is, why wouldn't you do that when she got hired? I think that's the specific question, right?
She came in under COVID. Everything was done remote. She didn't had a chance to meet with anybody face to face, any of the teachers face to face, did any of the school leaders face to face. She came in right at the time of severe lockdown. And I think that had an implication on not just her, but everybody.
All right.
It's nice to have that be in the past for us.
I don't know if you've seen this new movie about the atomic bomb, but time is not linear, Laura. You can't separate the past from the present day like that. But
You're wearing your Barbie pink because you're wearing you're gonna go see Barbie next after Oppenheimer.
I'm gonna see Actually, I saw Elemental yesterday, which was really good. Okay, Laura Capps, 2nd District Supervisor. We're gonna leave it there. Thank you so much for your generosity with your time and your leadership in the community and your terpsichorean performance in answering our questions here for
good. Another word for me to look up
for a lengthy time. And
Josh, you know what that word means?
Oh no, I'm looking it up too.
all right.
I have a
Thanks,
feeling
Laura.
it's not great. Okay.
No, it's good. No, it's really good. All right. Thank you so much. We
Okay.
appreciate it. Take care.